I mean, one of the driving things that's always in my mind when I'm making those is it's not for me, and it's not necessarily for their social media, but it's really for them as a person, and so they can use it however they want. But it's the most important thing for me is that they see themselves actually portrayed in it as realistically as possible, and not anything that's falsely interpreted by my impressions of them, or even how they may try to present themselves to the world. I want to be able to surprise people and find something that maybe they haven't seen in themselves, or an aspect of their own appearance that they, when they see them in my pictures, maybe they feel a little bit better about that, or maybe they haven't seen themselves portrayed realistically before, and it's always the greatest compliment when they are looking at their pictures and they really respond to that and know that they're honestly portrayed as a real person.
Welcome to another episode of Create and Connect Podcast, the podcast where we talk to artists and makers and see how they connect through their creations. I'm really excited to have with me today Mark Adams of Mark Adams Pictures. He's the hardest working man at Maker Camp. The line is long and people are patiently waiting. But Mark is not just a one-trick pony. He's a man of many talents and many locations. He hails from both Cleveland, Ohio and Portland, Oregon. And he is multifaceted, not only in giving of his time with his photographs, but also of service. He's also a man who will jump into the wild and be a first responder and help care for those out in the wilderness. And maybe we can hear a little bit about both from him today. Let's welcome Mark. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
We've met at Maker Camp and we've crossed paths a couple of times there, waiting patiently.
Right, yeah. The lines have ballooned considerably. It's always a great compliment that so many people are willing to wait and take the time to stop by and get a picture with me.
Well, it's more than just getting a picture with you. You are contributing to everybody's content creation portfolio, because your photograph of them will enhance their Instagram feed or their website, and your photos are what I see a lot of our friends using for their social media platform. So kudos to you for being a big part of everybody's social media presence.
I mean, one of the driving things that's always in my mind when I'm making those is it's not for me, and it's not necessarily for their social media, but it's really for them as a person, and so they can use it however they want. But it's the most important thing for me is that they see themselves actually portrayed in it as realistically as possible, and not anything that's falsely interpreted by my impressions of them, or even how they may try to present themselves to the world. I want to be able to surprise people and find something that maybe they haven't seen in themselves, or an aspect of their own appearance that they, when they see them in my pictures, maybe they feel a little bit better about that, or maybe they haven't seen themselves portrayed realistically before, and it's always the greatest compliment when they are looking at their pictures and they really respond to that and know that they're honestly portrayed as a real person.
Yeah, well, that's a unique gift that you have, that you're not taking somebody's posed portrait, is you're getting the person to reveal themselves, and that takes a special knack. And for you to really engage with somebody, you get to connect with each person that shows up for their portrait, and you just so generously given your time. So thank you for me. Thank you from the maker community for doing what you do. And I saw the pain that you were in this past Maker Camp of having stress in your life, and you worked through the pain. That back pain.
Yeah, the unfortunately the back pain's still with me. It started a little bit before Maker Camp, and then it's continued through that, and it's actually gotten worse. So I've been dealing with that for the last couple of months. Got an MRI on the lumbar, and it shows 5 bulging discs, some impingement on the nerves going down to the left leg primarily, and then also some arthritis in the neck and thoracic spine I'm dealing with as well.
Well, I wish you the best. I know that that's a long recovery, and stress does not help that at all. And
and heavy photo gear either. This is not beneficial. Putting up all the gear and stuff over a long career, that is probably some of the cause of that. But it's just and anybody, I think a lot of people in the maker community and anybody in any community, obviously, who's working with their hands or doing physical stuff deals with physical pain, whether it's blacksmiths and shoulders and backs and elbows and wrists and hands, or anybody who lifts anything and you do it once accidentally the wrong way, and that back is just damaged for the rest of your life. So.
Well, you did power through, and I see that when you needed time, you took the time. I know in years past you would power through, and
yeah, if I'm healthy, I'll shoot till 2 a.m. I love it. I want to I'll get up, go to the milk run, have a breakfast there, and kind of reset my brain for it. Head back to camp and fire up the light as soon as I can. I can get it going at 8:30 and then shoot till 2, and I'll be there the whole day. And it's an honor to be there. It's an honor to contribute to the community in any way that I can. But yeah, when I'm not healthy, I was shutting it off at 9:30, and people were incredibly understanding because they could see that I was doing as much as I could physically, and if I was turning it off, I literally just couldn't stand anymore.
Yeah, and it was very apparent that you did as much as you could, as often as you could. And kudos to you for taking a break and actually leaving the compound, because if you went up to get a meal, I'm sure you'd be inundated with people just trying to, grab you and talk to you. And you're a friendly guy that you want to engage with other people. Do you have a specific story or person that jumps out in your mind in the past couple of years that was really striking to you and where you made a connection with them?
I mean, there's I'll think back on a lot of different makers, and each one has their story. As you talk to people and you find out what drives somebody, or it's for me though. It's since I'm in the kind of the bridge between the public and private spaces. If I can get somebody to be comfortable in front of the set, in front of the camera, and not feel like it's we're just taking a picture. I always try to tell people that we're just having a conversation, and in the middle of it I just happen to take a couple of pictures, and the environment and the energy that I want to create is one where people feel accepted and understood and seen, and hopefully that is what contributes to the energy that is portrayed in the picture. And Joan from Bear Mountain Boats was really amazing. I met her the night before at Jimmy's. I'm in the kitchen, we were talking and chatting, and then she came around the next day and we're continued the talk and took some pictures. And there's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken at camp is of her. And she didn't quite love it as much, but then once she started seeing how people were really telling her that was her, that was really the person that they saw of her, and then she really kind of embraced it, and I think fell in love with it too. And those are the moments where I can hopefully find that part of a person, whether it's a look or an expression, a laugh, some kind of memory that they can have as a touchstone in their own lives, when they can look back at those images of themselves and feel confident in who they are. So it's really not one person, but it's kind of the more community. And there are some stories here and there that I'll remember, and kind of sometimes I'll start telling the story just randomly to somebody else, and I get really teared up because I still really remember those moments on set. And then the hardest ones are people that we've lost that I've taken their portrait, and those memories will still always be in my head whenever I see those pictures. So. It
is amazing how one picture to another transforms a person, because I was honored to be a part of the Jesse Combs Foundation, and Tamara asked me for a photo, and I didn't get it to her right away, so she ripped something off of, I guess, my Instagram, and somebody said, how did you get that photo of him? Like, every time I see his photo, he looks more like a scowl. And the photo that I use on my Instagram is one that you took a few years ago, and it's a little more serious in nature. Even my wife said, she goes, wow, like you look happy, like you can tell in your eyes that you're happy. And it was just nice to see that you're able to bring out a quality in somebody that they may not necessarily see in themselves, or even looking to portray.
Well, I think a lot of people that they're makers, or they're filming themselves, or they're taking a self-portrait. I think it's impossible for that person to get a reaction to themselves, right? You can't have. There's no energy outside yourself if you're taking a self-portrait. You're trying to either portray how you see yourselves, or you're trying to express something, or maybe you're just like, oh, this is a cool place, let me take a picture of it. But when you're actually having a conversation with somebody, if you're able to really connect with that person, and then you really open them up, and I think that's what you see in the pictures. So I've heard the term like super communicator, and it has to deal with like a lot of empathy and a lot of listening skills and things like that. And when I listen to the definitions of that, I kind of recognize some of those things in myself, and it's not something I would have ever defined myself as, because I'm pretty introverted, except when I'm on set, and then I'm a professional extrovert, which is what I have to be, because as you know, most people that I meet, and a lot of the people in the maker community, they are introverted, and they're used to working solo on their shop, and it's always surprising when people come up and they're very shy to get their picture taken. And since I understand that, because that's how I would be, I think that they understand that there's a kindred spirit on the other side of the camera who's protecting them and what they're going to be shown as, because I'll never show a picture that doesn't show somebody in the best light. It's not why I'm there. It's just there to be there for that person and to support them.
That's a real unique approach, as opposed to saying stand here, pose, look to the side, and click the picture. You invite the person into the actual process where you take a photo and you say, let's look at this. What do you see? And then able to have the conversation and connect to the person, and they're now a part of the process.
I look at it very much as a collaboration. I can't take a picture without somebody there, and they can't get a picture without me there. So, as long as we're both really emotionally present in that moment, I think we're going to find the best results for both of us. And I put in all that time because selfishly I love it. It's where I feel like I'm meant to be, and it's you're never going to find me behind a camera having a bad day. There's going to be problem solving. There's going to be challenges, technically, things like that, but especially in that moment, because I am doing such long hours. It's running a marathon every single day and trying to give every single person that comes on set the same amount of attention for 15 hours a day for 4 or 5 days straight. It's a workout, so it's running a marathon, and it's training, and it conditions me for everything else I do. And it's changed emotionally over the course of being at every single maker camp. Each year has its own kind of energy based on the weather. When you have a big rain apocalypse, a lot of people, kind of huddled under there, and that is one thing. And then some days it's super cold in the evening when it's, gets past midnight and it's 30 degrees and your hands can't feel your hands, but you still got people in line. You still want to have them have the same experience that somebody that came at 11 o'clock when it was sunny and 80 degrees. Each person that comes, I feel like they deserve to get as much attention and respect as I can give them at that time. And I try to give everyone the same thing. So I don't really care if you're famous, if you're not famous, if you're talented, not talented, if you're just starting, if you've been doing it for years. It doesn't matter to me. I don't judge anybody by outside standards. It's really that person as an individual. So.
You're very present in every person that shows up, and you can tell while you're working as hard as you are working and all day long that you are very much enjoying yourself and consistently the professional, and you almost begrudgingly ask for the help for the break so you can
yeah some people definitely there's several people, and they know who they are, and they're always telling me, hey, do you want some food, or do you want to get something to drink? You gotta take a step off the set. I see you're hurting. We might as well, let's just pause the line here, and I'll tell people you'll be back in a couple minutes. And there's a lot of people that protect me in that way, and I thank them for that. It's tough when you love it so much that you want to keep doing it, and you don't want to step away, because you don't want, especially for me, I don't want somebody, it's their first time at camp and they only have 5 minutes to stop by, and I don't want to not be there for that person. So I want them to have whatever experience they want to have on my set. I don't want to have them. So, oh, you know what? I saw you weren't there, so I didn't get a picture, and maybe I'll get it next year. I really don't want to miss a smile, a laugh, a story, and that moment of connection, because it is a drug. It's like you definitely feel, when you're able to open yourself up emotionally to allow other people to connect and to express themselves, and then you have a picture that's a record of that moment, and that they can look back and hopefully they can remember that. And, we all have tough times, and hopefully maybe they see that picture and they remember a good time in their life. So
yeah, I like that you also allow groups to show up, and there's so many makers that cross-pollinate, and they come in, whether they're the podcasting friends or they're the collaborative friends, or they just struck it up that weekend and come together, and you allow it all to happen when I think it was Rob Rojas coordinated the hat
Right.
makers.
Yep.
So, I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. I actually had somebody stop me and say, "Oh, you got a cowboy hat. I need to borrow that for the hat photograph." And I'm like, "Yeah, I got the hat. I'm in the picture."
Right. I was just walking the dog this morning, and I was listening to the the hat maker that demonstrates that you were
Jesse.
Yeah. And so I was walking around in the rain this morning, walking the dog and listening to that as a preparation for this. And it just sounds like she really enjoys the connection with people as she's kind of finding the story of the hat that she's going to be making with them. And I think there's so many people in the maker community that are there for the connection. And sometimes it doesn't even matter the medium. It doesn't matter if it's wood or metal or whatever it is, but as long as you're connecting and being able to share your information. And so many people, if they've got a project that they're working on, can reach out and say, "Oh, I've never worked in this before, and can you help me with that?" And I know a lot of people they can share their tools, or if you need, I don't have a laser cutter, but hey, this buddy does. Maybe you can, run it on their setup. So hopefully I'm building a little bit of that community, and that's why I'm there. It's that's why I originally got involved in it, and it was just so random meeting Jimmy and Derek and Patrick in Cleveland with 2017. Initially, and then 2018 initially, and then the spring make in Cleveland as well.
Why were you there?
Well, initially, so to go back, my origin story is related to motorcycles. I'd gotten back into motorcycles when I was living in the Bay Area. I bought a buddy's bike and rode that as a commuter for a couple of years, and then I decided to leave California and get on my motorcycle and camp across the U.S. for a couple of months. Just to kind of reset, I needed to find a new place to live. I was tired with living where I was at. And I had great experiences while I was there. I loved it, and that's where I did the search and rescue for 6 or 7 years. And again, giving back to the community, being a part of a team, an amazing opportunity to give back if you like the outdoors. And I always try to recommend people get involved in a search and rescue if they can, if they are a hiker, if they're an outdoors person, if you have that knowledge and the ability and the tools to get out there and help people in their darkest moments. So that's the kind of the other passion that I had, but I needed a reset, and so I hopped on the motorcycle and headed off across the U.S. I rode through Cleveland because I needed to swap out a clutch after going through. I started in the Bay Area, went down to L.A., and then I went across to Vegas because a buddy was running a medical conference there, and then over to Phoenix, then down to Tucson, and then down to Bisbee, then in Santa Fe, Antonio, or not Santa let's see, just a little bit of Texas, and then up into Oklahoma and Missouri, up through like Indiana, and then over to just below Chicago, because I was like originally going to follow the Route 66 going from the West Coast to the East Coast, and then I was going to come back on the Trans-America Trail, which is an off-road trail from South Carolina to Oregon. But I needed to change out a clutch because I wanted to head up into Canada, and I had followed a community motorcycle garage in Cleveland called Skidmark Garage. And they also have a nonprofit that they're connected to called MotoGo, and they do bringing shop class back to high school students. And so they bring motorcycles into these schools, and Honda these generally, and kids learn to tear them apart, to work on the engines, to work on the suspension, and at the end of the term they hopefully fire up a motorcycle. Well, I knew that I was following them on social media. I could rent some bench space and swap out my clutch, and then I could head up into Toronto and Montreal and explore. I ordered the parts, and it was going to be 10 days. So I was like, okay, well, let me just ride around Ohio and explore Ohio and hang out with these people. Then, the parts arrive, and I start working on the clutch. And it's not even a day job, but, you're stopping, you're playing Settlers of Catan, you're playing like Frisbee golf, you're hanging out, you go out for lunch. And it's like 2 weeks later that I'm like, hey, I got to leave. It's been great. I'm headed up into Toronto and Montreal. And then there was this Fuel Cleveland motorcycle show that was going to be that next weekend. And I'm like, you know what? Those guys are so great. I should, I really miss them. So then I rode down through Connecticut and Pennsylvania and Vermont and headed back just to go to the show and hang out with the people again. And I rode back in, and I was like, you know what, these are my people. So that's how I found Cleveland. And then I moved there, had all my stuff, and I was doing portraits for some event, and I just had left stuff up. And I'm working on my bike, and some evening, and they were setting up some Chinese food and at these tables, and I was like, what the hell's going on? So these people come walking in that I didn't recognize, and I was like, oh, hey, maybe they got a cool look about them, and I'll take a picture. And took a picture. Well, I walked up to him and I'm like, hey, you want a portrait? And they're like, well, what do you mean a portrait? And I'm like, well, I'm a photographer and I've got the setup upstairs, so let's go up there. So I took one picture, and then I went back to working on my motorcycle. I emailed him. I didn't think anything about it. And like 10, 15 minutes later, another like a little pack of these people come walking up, and they're like, hey, are you that guy that these pictures? Could we get some of those? And then the rest of the night, we're all up there taking pictures, and they're drinking beers and hanging out. So that's kind of how I got into the maker community.
I love that it's so organic and just happens that way. So what brought you to doing the search and rescue?
Well, because I was looking for something to give back to the community. I was, fostering animals, dogs and cats with a rescue organization. And I was looking through, Outside Magazine, and that would have been 2008, maybe, something like that. And there was a profile on the search and rescue team. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Then I was reading through the newspaper, and I was like, oh, there's open applications for the search and rescue team. You can apply. So I went through the first application process, and they had so many people apply that they just couldn't have time to interview everybody. Then I reapplied like 6 months later, I think, 6 months or a year later. Got accepted. Then went through the boot camp that they would do. So you've got medical, you've got ropes and rigging, you've got night navigation, you've got compasses, GPS, all that kind of radios, all the kinds of things that you have to do with search and rescue. And we do, weekly and monthly trainings. And we'd get a pager and get called out at 2 a.m. in the rain looking for a missing hiker that didn't return, or we do evidence searches with the sheriff's department, lost kids, Alzheimer's walkaways, just a huge range of things that would give back to the community. So that was one of the most amazing things I've ever done.
And was that volunteer, or that was a paid
volunteer
position?
Yeah, no, volunteer. Most search and rescue is volunteer. It's in California. It's generally run through law enforcement, so sheriff's departments generally, and that's county by county. But throughout the whole system, you'll get multi-agency call-outs. So we would end up in Shasta or Yosemite, and any other county in California would give us a call.
And you were still working full-time?
Oh yeah,
photographs.
Yep. But you train, and you want to be able to use that training to give back. So a lot of time, you're giving a lot of time training and away from your family, but also giving back to a different family, right? So, and my team had a great, and still does have a great youth program. So the youngest age you can join, I think, is 14, and about half the members are teenagers. So it's an amazing way for those teenagers to develop skills and confidence to continue on with the rest of their life. So giving back both to upcoming generations and then people in the immediate need is just such a satisfying thing to do.
Well, you're constantly giving, because you're giving a ton of your time. You're going above and beyond when I see you working. And then, I'm sure that weekend doesn't exactly pay the bills.
to say the least, yeah. And I was not last year, but the year before, I had put out the Maker Camp portrait book. Mm-hmm. And I was, kind of adding up the time, and it's like $1 an hour. It's not, because I would be driving from Cleveland to camp, and so I've got like 10, 11 hours on the road there and back. If I've combining all the years that I've done it, I've got like 60 to 70 hours just in drive time. And then if you're working 4 or 5 days for 15 hours a day, you just do the math. It's just not. I'm not doing it for the economic reward of it, but because
there's definitely something more involved, more valuable to you to continue to do that. So who exactly invited you to join camp?
So I did this initial maker portraits, and Lincoln Electric put their spring make together in 2018, maybe. I think it was 2008. Anyway, and so I was invited to do portraits there. Did portraits, and Patrick and Jimmy were there, and a bunch of other people. Jessie Combs was there, which is when I initially met her, and Tam, and a wide range of people. And a couple months later, I get contacted by, I think it was Patrick, or it could have been Jimmy. I don't remember. And they're like, "Hey, we're putting together this thing. We don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be in upstate New York. It's going to be a maker thing. We've never done it before, but Austin has an idea to kind of make East Durham a maker kind of community destination. Do you want to come up and be a part of it?" And on my trip, I had come up with the mindset that if it seems cool, if it's going to be fun, if it's going to be positive, then I'll say yes to it, whether I'm going to make money or not. So let me just, I'm going to show up there. I'm going to work as hard as I can, and whatever it's going to be is going to be. I don't have any expectations for it. And so come rolling in that first year, and I was kind of like a little bit of a subway busker. I was, standing there. Nobody had seen my face because I don't really put that out there. And I'm not, like an influencer, and people just don't know me from that. But people would be walking by, and I'd be like, hey, come on, get a picture. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I'm just going to have a conversation with you. You'll take some pictures, and I'll email it to you. And that first year was literally like trying to pull people off the walking by from, going to get barbecue or going to get a beer at the bar. I know some of those people, there wasn't a context for it. So, take the picture and they like it, and then they, bring a friend, and then they bring two friends, and that's kind of how it grew. So every year, just come back and do a little bit more. And a couple years ago, the lines were just like bananas. Like I didn't have less than 20, 25 people standing there the entire time I was there. Then we tried to use like the deli sign numbers, hopefully to kind of help out a little bit. There were some technical issues with that, but it seemed to help a little bit, because it is one of those things where I just do what I do. I just have my head down. I'm just trying to do as much as I can for the person in front of me. And I don't want to ever rush anybody. And I want to give everybody the same amount of attention. And some people take a little more time, and some people go really quickly. And I know that everybody is waiting, and I want everybody to feel like their time waiting has been valuable to me, because I know they're back there, and I'm going to give them as much attention as I can when they finally get in front of the camera. So try to minimize the wait times. But yeah, so it just kind of evolved, really.
When did you feel like the first connection that you were a part of the maker community?
The first time, I guess, because I didn't really understand that first time at the garage when I took some portraits. I didn't really know about the maker community, and so we were standing there, and people were like, hey, can I get a picture with Jimmy? Can I get a picture with Jimmy? And I'm like, I don't know who this Jimmy guy is, but you got to ask him. If he wants a picture with you, bring him over. So then, I took some pictures with Jimmy, and obviously everybody who knows Jimmy and has met Jimmy, and he's, such a great giving guy, has really done so much for those around him and the people that inspiring so many people. But I wasn't aware of the range and depth of how many people were involved in it, just because it wasn't on my radar yet. Because I was much more into the hands that I was working with was like either sets for photo stuff or motorcycles, working on house stuff. And then when the community kind of started to embrace what I was doing, it really kind of happened organically. So I don't think there was really one person or moment that kind of either solidified it. But I think the Spring Make was definitely a part of it with Lincoln Electric. And then definitely Maker Camp is kind of the anchor of my relationship to the maker community. And sometimes I'm really surprised, because it wasn't something that was ever on the life plan was not to be whatever part of the maker community that I'm part of, because I don't necessarily, however people want to envision me being in the maker community, or whatever they see me as, whatever I contribute, that's kind of what it is. It's not, I don't really define my connection in one way or another. I know a lot of makers will like, oh, I'm a blacksmith or I'm a woodworker. I take pictures and I do things with my hands. So it's not as narrowly defined as one task. But for a long time, people are like, you're a photographer, like do you make anything? I'm like, well, I remodeled a house, refinished hardwood floors, I installed the salvaged hardwood flooring that was pulled out of someplace because I wanted to match the hardwood flooring. Done sheetrock, done plumbing, done tile, landscaping, any range of things that you can think of, I've at least done to some extent. I have a personality that unfortunately is driven that I want to do it perfect the first time. That can sometimes, I can take a little bit of time to do something that somebody might do really quickly, but I want to do it perfect. I don't care whether it's the first time, but I want to do it the best I possibly can and give as much energy to it. And I know that if I do something, I want to be proud of it. I want to be able to show somebody that I put the time and effort into it. Unfortunately with this back thing, I've really been limiting with what I've been able to do, because I was getting the garage ready to set up all the woodworking and welding stuff that I've got in the garage. And it's just been really, really challenging physically to be able to finish that. So if you were to take a look in the garage right now, it's piled high with bins and piles of stuff because I had pulled some stuff away from the wall so I could run some electric. And Patrick Reynolds has been amazing with his consultation, because electricity is something that I don't always get. It's just the way my brain works is a little bit it's much more visual. So if I can start to see it visually, then I can understand it. But when Patrick's trying to explain it to me, and he's got so much of experience and just the depth of knowledge, and it's really amazing. And I like to call the when I'm running the wires, I'll call them like these wizard ropes, because I don't know how these things work. I use them all the time. I've been using them my whole life, plugging them in, and it's like, okay, I just plug it in here and the power goes there. But like when you're talking about the gauges of the wire, and you've got to have, the circuit's got to have this and that, and you've got to have, grounding on this and this. And it's just all the detail stuff that I would like to do perfectly, but my brain just still is having a real hard challenge with it. So I would not say my maker community is, as an electrician, I absolutely think that would be a danger to the community. But I just got a Harvey bandsaw that I really want to get going on, and a Lincoln welder that I'd like to be playing with. But I've got to run 220 to the garage, and that's been just physically, it's been impossible for me to do. I'd run some stuff, and I just have not been able to finish it. So that's a little bit of a roundabout way to say that, I don't, whatever my part in the maker community, however everyone wants to define it. I'm sure people define it differently, each person. But hopefully they've all had a positive experience, and that's I guess big positivity is my connection to the maker community.
Well, you're definitely a foundation of the maker camp, and you were definitely one of the highlights for so many people that they it's like a kid going to Disney World. I got to get on this ride, or I got to see this character. And not to say you're a character, but
but yeah, it is funny when people come up and they're like, "Oh, it was on my bucket list to get a Mark Adams picture," and I'm like, thank you, but it's so much easier when somebody doesn't have an expectation of what they're gonna get, but it's a challenge, and when someone does say that it has been on their bucket list, I know that I have to kind of go maybe in a little bit different direction to work around that expectation and to see what we can get for that person, because I don't want them to be limited by their expectation or my expectation of them, but just to find that emotional space in that moment. And sometimes that takes a little bit of different tools. So it's always, every person's a little bit of a different challenge, conversationally or approach-wise. And it continues to build the depth of skill that I have, because I work very hard at what I do. And I think the thing that a lot of people maybe don't appreciate, and I know Jeff Fader talks about this sometimes when he talks about working in a production metal shop, building fences. And if you're building a fence that needs 1,000 pieces that look exactly the same, and you've got to make them in a certain time frame, you're going to make choices, and that make you very efficient and very work in a way that is a smart way to work, and not every piece doesn't have to be an artistic exploration. And so when you do something 1,000 times, you get very quick at it and very skilled at doing something, and it teaches you the things that you never would have assigned yourself. So if I was to try to assign myself to make a picture that I wanted to come up with, it would be a very slow, laborious process, and I would suffer through every choice. But if I'm working for a client, I don't have that time frame. I've got to make these choices quickly, and over the course of my career, I've been trained to work incredibly quickly. And if it's not working, you make a different choice. And so from the commercial aspect of things, I try to take that into the Maker Camp portraits, which is a much more of a personal project, but each person's personality requires a little bit different touch. That's one of the greatest gifts that I've been given, is given the opportunity to have so many different people come in front of my set and give me the opportunity to find a different way to connect with that person. And then I remember those skills for the next person, and it keeps building on itself. So the better I can do with one person makes me better for every other person that's coming up that next day.
Well, the people that are coming up to you for the first time and saying they want a Mark Adams picture, I believe is probably one of the best compliments that you could get, because it's the quality and professionalism that they're looking for without even knowing you as a person. And then to get to know you as a person, see how much you care about what you're doing. You're not just taking their picture. You're trying to bring their concept to life, which is even more difficult for an artist, where you can, like Michelangelo has his own concept of, what Moses is going to look like. But, now you want to get their concept of what they're going to look like, and you invite them into the process. And, that's part of the skill, of the personal skill. And again, kudos to you for doing that and bringing it into place, and being so patient, and watching how over the past couple of years it evolved from you grabbing somebody off the barbecue line to people waiting 2.5 hours, with the deli ticket that
Right.
says,
Yeah.
you know.
Which is why I tried to do the deli. Because I don't want to take away from the rest of camp. I want people to have as much experience as a camp as they can. And I actually had, I was kind of forced through necessity to take a little bit of extra break this year. And the one thing that I'm not great at is names. And like if I don't hear a name, sometimes I can't pronounce it. I can see it. But so Berchtold Knives, or Berchtold, the axe.
Berchtold.
Yeah.
Nick Berchtold.
Yeah, Nick Berchtold. So he had brought me a handle that he had made with he engraved the logo, the P logo from thing. And he did an amazing job with an axe head and leather cover for it with my name on it and everything. And he brought it to me, and I needed to hang it during the maker camp. And so I went over to Tracy and sat down and draw a knife on it, and took some time to actually do something outside the photo part of what I was doing.
Not easy to do, to pull away. You're a presenter, and now you want to enjoy all of the other activities and aspects which you don't get to do.
Yeah, no, this was the first thing I'd ever done at maker camp that wasn't a photo.
Right.
It was
good for you. Yeah.
Because when I go there, it's if I was to go and want to do everything there, I would have to not be taking pictures, because I couldn't. My brain would want to be doing what I do on set, so that people would have that. But yeah, it really forced me to take a couple hours one morning and sit there and be a maker, be someone just doing something at camp. And that was a wonderful gift that he gave me. It was really, really thoughtful and amazing. And I know that that's something he does for other people as well. So, and I always want to try and remember the people that have helped me, or they have given a compliment or any sort of encouragement, because I know that is something that we can all do for everybody else, is kind of help move somebody forward positively. And that's amazing when it happens to you unexpectedly. So I just want to thank him for that.
Yeah, it's great. And Jimmy DeResta says it, all ships rise with a high tide, and, keep bringing people up. And I saw Nick walking around gifting those axe handles, and he does absolutely beautiful work, and so many different aspects between the wood shaping on his CNC, and then the lasering with the axe head, and then the sheath and the leather work. I mean, it's so complex and really beautiful. And to have somebody be a part of your life and, gift you that and be a part of it is, now you guys are sealed together through that gift. That's really the most beautiful thing in the connection of the maker community. I was really happy to see that. I was glad for you that you had time to do something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No. And it was. I mean, I think it's everybody's camp is different, right? So everybody's looking for, either they're trying to learn a new skill, so they'll sign up for a different workshop, or they'll try and share their skills with doing the presentations, or just some people just want to come and hang out and socialize with friends that they meet online, or that they only have kind of a distant relationship with digitally, and they want to spend most of their time just connecting face to face with people, and that's incredibly valuable as well. And like I said, each camp is different. Like, it's got a different energy to it. And so I think when you go into the situation with an expectation, I think you sometimes limit yourself. And so that's kind of what I was going with like when people come up and say, hey, I want to, I'd like a Mark Adams picture. I'm like, well, then let's try and stop your expectation, because I know we can do something better, because I know I don't want you to limit yourself, but just open yourself up to whatever happens to happen. And camp is really, a great reminder of that every year, because it's going to be different. The weather's going to be different. You may have forgotten something, it's even like the smallest thing, like, most, unfortunately in my world, a little 6-inch wire connector could ruin the day, because you can't the camera won't talk to the computer, or whatever, or you can't download the card or whatever it is, and you're like, oh my God, like, and usually, in my world, I have to have, 3 of everything just in case.
Right.
Because if there's a failure, it's catastrophic. So that's when you have to overcome the obstacles, and sometimes those obstacles are the greatest inspiration for creativity. Because when you see the images that I'm putting out, from the outside, you don't know where I'm shooting. You don't, like, hopefully you don't think that the images suffer from the situation. Because when I first showed up that first year, I had done the spring make, which was in kind of a big old building, lots of power, high ceilings. You can build a studio in it, no problem. When I showed up to Maker Camp the first time, and every year since, it's the same kind of location. An open air wind tunnel with basically like one outlet. So I've got like a 15 amp circuits. I leave 90% of my stuff in the truck that first year because I'd brought a full studio worth of stuff. I could have built 3 sets with all the gear I'd brought, but power wise I only have enough power for one light and a computer, and the wind's howling through there and it's raining, and so I can't do much with like backgrounds or sets or things like that because it's going to get damaged, it's going to get blown over, it's going to be a safety concern. And so it really forced me emotionally to not be about the equipment, but to be about the person. And so since that moment when I realized that in the very first camp, that's all these pictures have been about, is that person. And so the limitations of the situation and the environment forced me to find the more important aspect of it, which has always been what was important in pictures for me. But I just needed to be reminded of it because when you're working commercially, it's about the product or about the time or whatever it is. But sometimes it isn't about that personal connection. But in a portrait, it has to be. And so the limitations that I had technically really forced me to refocus on that. And that's kind of been the cornerstone of that work. So I think we need to just embrace the challenges sometimes and embrace things that are outside of our control. Because if we can do anything we want, we're not going to make choices. We're just going to throw everything at it. I think a lot of times we learn a lot more if we have less to work with.
Is there any one person or people that you really connected with through a portrait photo?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, like the stories of people that, because when I'm like the process that I work with, that I'm kind of the steps that I go through, because people always ask like, hey, can you, maybe you have somebody take care of this, and that'll speed you up and you'll be able to, work with more people. But everything that I do when somebody's walking up to the set, I'm making all these millions of decisions about that person and trying to see what that person likes about themselves, what they don't like about themselves, what they're proud of, what they're trying to show me, maybe as a shield, or how do I get around that? Because we all present ourselves one way or another, depending on the environment or the crowd or what we want that person to think of us. And those are all things that I need to see in the milliseconds that somebody's walking up to me. And so if I'm not taking the time to greet that person as they're coming up, or seeing them walk up to the set, then I'm not getting that information, that I'm not being able to have that to make those choices later. And then when I go through the first couple of shots and then I show you the pictures and I see what you're not saying to me when you're looking at the pictures and what you like and what you don't like, and then I can use that information to make it better and to be something and hopefully surprise you in a different way that you weren't expecting, because I can see something that you maybe don't want to show somebody, or you don't know that you want to show somebody. Because a lot of people, we all have things that we like about ourselves and things that we don't like about ourselves. And if I can take something that I see somebody kind of holding back with and make them really proud of that, then that expands who they are and the pride that they have in themselves, a part of themselves that maybe they were protecting and they haven't been proud of. And then if I can give that to them back, then that gives that connection to that person. And I see that happen when people are looking, and I see when we're scrolling through stuff and they kind of have a little catch in their voice about, and you can hear that emotion that they're not telling you. And those are the most beautiful moments in the world. Like that's why I put that time in, is to get that 1 millisecond of time when they have that unguarded emotion of pride that they see in themselves. And so I think each person, if I can give that, is the goal. And sometimes I can't get it, and sometimes the person's not emotionally available for it. But I think most people at Maker Camp, the environment of it allows people to be much more emotionally vulnerable and supportive. And it's a beautiful thing. And so when I have that in my head, when I see that, like whether that's something that they can carry with them, and I know that that's going to be something that they can share with their family or their spouse or themselves, and it's that connection. There's plenty of those that happen, and it would be I don't want to minimize anybody's experience, and so every time I see that is a beautiful connection with that person. And there are definitely people that like some of the greatest things that I have been able to connect with people is you bust balls with somebody, so it's like, and there's plenty of people that, some people, that's the way they express their love. Like if you're not busting balls with somebody, it's like you don't love them, and then other people, require a different touch. And so I really, I'm blessed to have the opportunity to connect with people in whatever way they want. But yeah, no, And there are special people that I when I was putting together the portraits for the Maker book, it was really hard to choose which ones went in there because I really wanted it to be about the quality of the photo. And so I tried to limit the amount of people having more than one picture of themselves in that book, because some people are just really dynamic with their energy and you can get a great picture, but I didn't want it to really focus on too many pictures on one or two makers. I wanted to really have a broad selection of pictures. When I initially thought about it, I'm like, oh, I'll pick my favorite 100 pictures, and that'll be easy. I'll take that in a weekend, no problem. I mean,
how long did it take you?
Hundreds of hours. Because I wanted to go through, and I had my favorites from those years that I had remembered seeing, or that I had posted, or that other people had posted, but I had to go through and I had to look at every single picture, and I might shoot 6,000 to 8,000 pictures a weekend. So if I've got 5 years to go through, I'm going through 40,000 to 50,000 pictures one by one, and then I'm pulling out the ones that are the best of those scenarios, and then I'm editing those down from that. So when I did an initial cull, I had 800 or 1,000 pictures to pull my favorite 100 out of, and then I ended up getting it down to like 400, and it's like, okay, well, this is as tight as I can go. So, and then I had an unrealistic expectation of how many pictures were going to end up in the book, and so I kind of changed the format to having multiple pictures on the page, and because I couldn't do a 500-page book, it just was economically wasn't feasible. So it is interesting to look through those pictures, and I know when that first year when that came out, that I wanted people to be able to use it as a yearbook and be able to sign each other's pictures and be able to write things to their friends and contribute to having them be proud of what they look like and connect. So it's really about the connection and the supports.
Well, I can't believe that I made the book. I had somebody reach out to me and they're like, "Oh, you got to buy the book. You're in it." And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. And I made the book. I'm actually, I think, in the first quarter or so, first few pages.
Well, and there was, and like, that's the other thing. Like, you've got, say you get it down to 400 pictures, like, what's the ordering of it then? It's like, okay, well, I didn't want to do it year by year because I wanted it to kind of play off the energy of the other pictures around it, or to have some sort of kind of a dialogue between the images. And then that's a whole other thing that you kind of be like, oh, well, this picture is better with this picture, and then this picture is better with this one. And I had little mini, like 1-inch printouts of all of them laid out on a table and moving them around manually because I needed to see them all visually. And then you're looking at the spread and how the book flows. And the only pictures that are individual pictures on the page are people that have passed away, because I wanted to give them that time to themselves.
Well, you did a tremendous job. How many photos did you end up with?
I mean, I think it's somewhere over 350. I think. I didn't go through back and count it. At the end of it, it was really a race to the end to try and get it done.
And you got it done for 2024's Maker Camp?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I do remember people were walking around with the book asking other people to sign it. So you accomplished what you set out to do.
Yeah, it was very close. And I could not have done it without the people that helped me. Jason helped me a ton with the layout because I just didn't have that skill, and I didn't. With all the time and energy that I was putting into it, I didn't have the extra energy to do that. So,
which Jason is that?
Jason Russell next, because he had his Insta was a different thing, because he does a lot of like selling of tools and items and things like that,
right? Estate
sale stuff. And he had transitioned his thing from that, but he was like, literally without his help, the book would not have happened. So anytime I talk about the book, I want to always make sure that he gets as much credit for putting that book together as I did, because it just would not have happened without him, which is part of the community, right? Everybody gives what they can give.
And whose original concept was it? Was it your concept?
Yeah, no, because I had, once I'd done a couple of years, I was like, I should put together a book of these so that people can have them like a yearbook, and then I kind of started going down that road of selecting the pictures, and just realized like what an idiot I was. If I wanted to make any money, it was not going to be making that book. It was hundreds of hours of just going through everything, and then once I've selected them, then I had to go through and I had to retouch and finesse the exposures, and because I wanted each picture, if it's going to be printed, it's going to live for a lot longer than something just as a digital file. So I wanted to make sure that everyone had the proper exposure and the shadows were where they wanted to be. And if I wanted to darken something or brighten something, that was all done. So each one of those 350 pictures is 2 minutes to 10 minutes of work. So then you just do the math on that. It's like, okay, well, and you've got to do it by hand because I can't express to somebody else what I want out of that. And it may be just a little thing, and you may not see it unless you see the two pictures side by side. And some people will be like, is it better? Is it not better? It's better to me. So
well, I just heard Jimmy DeResta talking on Making a podcast, and he said one of the things that a lot of makers suffer is perfectionism. Like you were talking about, and your quality of work is so strong. What people seek out is your professionalism, your quality of work. Yeah, to a person that's not a picture person, they can't see the difference that you made. But to you, the quality of your work. And, if it's throwing two pieces of wood together for a flooring job and you're not a floorer, all right, so you put a little wood putty in there and you move on.
No,
but,
unfortunately, that is not, So a couple of years ago, this was 2019, I think. I got a call from my dad, and he wanted me to come back to help close down the childhood home, to get it on the market, sell it, because Mom had to go into Alzheimer's care. And so on the way back, I was just going to come back for like 2 weeks and clean out the house. Is going to go on the market. And my buddy's like, well, why don't you somebody's going to buy it, and they're going to have to put a bunch of work in it, and then they're going to flip it. And that house deserved a lot more. So I committed to remodeling the whole house. And that there were several rooms that were additions in the late 70s that always had subflooring carpet. They didn't have original flooring. And the original house was red and white oak mixed hardwood flooring, solid hardwood. And I wasn't willing to have non-period correct oak in 2 rooms of the house. So then I went to architectural salvage places and got a ton of stuff, and it's different thicknesses. It's been refinished different times. It's got different stains on it. And so I started doing that, and the pandemic hit. And so I couldn't get all the grits I needed. So I'd have to get like one grit and do what I could do with that. And then I'd have to wait until I could get, then I would shift to drywall, or I'd shift to tile, or I'd do landscaping. But when I put those floors in, I wanted that floor to look like it had always been there, and I did not want to sacrifice any quality with that. So if you go into those rooms where I put it in there, it's just as well done as the rest of somebody who is doing it their whole life. So, and that's what I'm going to do every single time.
Well, I've seen some flip houses done by contractors, and they don't put that much care into it. Yeah,
no, absolutely not. And and this house was built originally in 1940. My parents got it in like 1970 maybe. And they had done an addition of 3 rooms. So it was a basement, a den, and then my bedroom on one side of the house. But the landscaping, I scraped everything down to the dirt unless it was a mature tree. Redid, 2,000 square feet of hardwood flooring, built out the whole basement. We did 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, finished out the basement, or the garage, and so much landscaping. I probably brought in 8-10 yards of soil, probably another 12 yards of gravel, like 6-7 yards of sand. Then when they had done that addition, they had used local brick because the house had been built with local brick. And so during the addition, they had the seconds and thirds that they'd pulled out of those piles of bricks, and they had made brick paths around the property. And so when I was redoing the landscaping, I pulled up all those brick paths, sorted all that for size, shape, consistency, and then I did the driveway that needed to be replaced because it was originally concrete and the roots had destroyed that. So I pulled out all that concrete, and then I put a herringbone pattern of brick on the driveway and then sand set that. So those are all skills that, I hadn't done before, but I was going to do it perfect. When you look at it, it looks like it's been there the whole time. And it was really great to be able to reuse that brick and to make it feel like it had always been there. The same thing with the hardwood flooring. Like I wanted that to always feel like it had been a part of the house. I hate it when I go into a house and it looks like they've made decisions that were simply to get the thing done as the cheapest thing. And I know as a business, you've got to make those decisions sometimes, but I know that aesthetically, sometimes you're wasting material because it's going to be ripped out in a couple of years because it's not what quality is. And when you go into a house and you see particle board in a bathroom, what are you doing? Like, for God's sakes, like, this is just so wrong. And so those are decisions that I did not make. And when the pandemic hit, I couldn't take pictures in public because people weren't going out in public. And so it was a good opportunity timing wise. And so I could also use that project as a way to kind of thank that house for what it had given me, and then also to process my childhood, my family getting older, having to leave the house, and those kind of things. So it was a whole round emotional thing. And the last night that I was there cleaning it up, sweeping it up, getting it ready to go into the open house that next day, I got a call from my dad that mom had passed away. So it all really wrapped up in that project. So.
Wow, it's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Because that's the other passion I've got is, I love motorcycles, and I would not be a part of the maker community without motorcycles, because I would not have stopped in Cleveland, because that's why I stopped, is to go to that community shop. And then I would not have met Jimmy and those guys from the maker community without motorcycles. When you travel on a motorcycle, you're so much more open to meeting people, and people will like stop you because either they ride, and as a community we're also very supportive. If I see a Harley pulled over with a flat, I'm going to pull over, whether and I ride adventure bikes, and so it's just, if you're on two wheels, I'm going to try and help you out. So it's a similar community, even though there are divisions within like sports bikes and choppers and all that. But ultimately we all ride, and we all want everyone to be safe on the road. So people say, how did I find it? It was on a motorcycle. That's how I found the maker community. And my amazing supportive partner, I wouldn't have without motorcycles either, because one of her best friends had come to Portland for college 25 years ago, 30 years ago. And she went back to live in Cleveland because that's where her family was. And then when I was out here doing the remodel, she said, hey, I've got a friend that's still out in Portland. So why don't you see, hang out, have friends, have coffee. And we've been together five and a half years. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, we can have a whole nother discussion if you'd like to just talk about the motorcycles, because I have a Street Glide special, and enjoy being on it. And I got that bike so I could go for longer rides, and I'm trying to get cross country with that. 2 years ago I drove cross country with my boys. I have two boys, and we did it in 9 days, and we pushed it, and we got it done. But
were they on Harleys too, or no?
We were in a truck.
Oh, okay.
No, if I don't know that my wife would enjoy hearing that her babies are on motorcycles, but yeah. I
mean, I think that's the thing. Like, people that don't ride are always like, oh, they're so dangerous. And I'm like, well, they're no more dangerous than any other thing we do, as long as we're doing something with consideration and understanding. And so I wear all the gear all the time. I'm one of those guys. I'm a very defensive driver. I don't want to get killed out there. I want to do it the rest of my life, and I would like a longer life than that. Again, it's I call it my helmet therapy, because I just put foam earplugs in. I don't have earbuds in. I don't listen to music. I want that time. And my camping trip, it was just me out there. I was just in a 2-person tent with my gear on one side of it and me on the other. And all those hours alone I had in my head. I could process the things that I liked, the things that I wanted to continue with, the things I didn't want, and use that time to really reset myself for the next phase of my life. When you ride a motorcycle like that, I don't want to get woo-woo or spiritual, but it's really just giving you the time away from all the distractions. And when you're having a beautiful day and the weather's great and you're in the flow, and it's just so peaceful and healing. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people will share in the motorcycle community, and understand when there's no better day than if you've got a beautiful day on the bike and you're out with friends, and or just out by yourself, and getting you time to recharge, to be back with your family. And I feel like that's one of the things we don't often have a chance to prioritize, is the healing we need in ourselves and the recharging we need in ourselves to be able to be present with those around us, and not carry over the frustrations of some work issue or some other issue. And motorcycles do that for me. So.
Yeah, as it does for me. It's so freeing, and it's great to connect with yourself and connect with higher power, and just be alone with your own thoughts, because when you're driving you still have the distraction of the phone or the radio or something. And when you're riding, you have to be alert, you have to be active, you have to be present. And if you're tired or mentally worn out, it's time to pull over and take a break.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was doing on my trip is, I get on the bike in the morning, and I knew that I wanted to go east because I was originally riding the Route 66, and then I wanted it to be something different. Like I didn't want to just ride those miles and do 300 miles a day. So I started just in a different mindset. I switched to I want to have each time I stop, I want to have some kind of an experience that connects me to that space, whether it's an amazing meal, a great conversation, see something beautiful. And so I would, get out of my tent and I'd be like, oh, I need a coffee shop that's under 50 miles that way. So I would just ride, and I needed to go kind of east and north. And so I would just, look on Google, I'd fire it up and be like, find the best rated coffee shop, that looked cool. And so I'd go and then I'd have a conversation with the person behind the counter, and you'd be like, find out about their day or that town, and then get on the bike and be like, hey, what's lunch, that way. And I would also try to find antique stores or like secondhand stores, because I can get off the bike. It's like a free museum, right? Like most of those objects are from the local community, especially in the Southwest. You get a lot of pottery, a lot of ceramics, a lot of artwork, and those people are there because they love that stuff, and they're probably recovering collectors, or like trying to, the people that own antique shops, collected too much, and now they need to sell it to feed it. So they're more than willing to talk about their community and then the pieces that are in the shop, and so you get a little bit of history, and you get off the bike, and you can have a snack, and you can stay hydrated, and you can find out about that space, and then you get on the bike and you keep going. And I wasn't getting that when I put a 300-mile day on, because I didn't want to just ride by a place. Ultimately, I was kind of looking for my next place to go, and taking that time to get off the bike. And every time you pull off your helmet and somebody's walking by and they're like, oh, I ride, or oh, my dad rode, or my mom rode, my sister rides now, or like, and I would have people that would invite me over to, have a meal with them or hang out. Just because I was on a motorcycle, it's not like I'm getting out of a car where I'm kind of self-contained. It's like you kind of know that if you're on a motorcycle, you're either carrying everything with you, and you want to support people that are, it's a little bit vulnerable out there. Like, you pull over by the side of the road, you got a flat tire. If you don't have all the gear, you might need a little help. You might need a truck, air compressor, whatever it is. And so you want to share that. You want to help those people. And that's how I saw America. That's how I went across it and had some wonderful experiences. Beautiful.
Did you take photos of people? Did you take portraits of people so you'd remember them?
I took a lot of gear that I almost never used because it just became something different. It became much more of an internal thing. I brought like a audio recorder, I brought a drone, I brought my cameras, and I almost never pulled that stuff out. It just would become a barrier, and it would become something that I would start thinking of it as work when it was needed to be more of something me healing and me connecting. And that's much more easy to do. And with phones, it's like, okay, let me just take a picture of you with my phone. And so I started a separate Instagram, and it's private now because I just, I don't really post to it that much. And it's not really, I started just for the trip. So the only pictures I was posting on it were from the road. So there's a lot of pictures of antique shops, and there's a lot of pictures of like things, just from the road, sunsets, and people I would talk with, but they're not a professional level. It's just it's an old iPhone at that point. But when I look back on it, there's those memories there, and it is each moment that I was able to connect with somebody was valuable on the whole trip. That's another thing that motorcycles have with. It's an easy way to connect with people because you don't have the barriers of the door and the windshield. And as you're riding along, you're smelling every single thing on that road, whether you want to or not. Skunks, garbage, gas, whatever, it's going to be in your helmet for longer than you want it. And skunk smell especially will stick in that helmet for a while.
Yeah.
But it allows you to smell the rain coming and to the flowers blooming, and then every part of the world that you're surrounded by, you take a part of it in, and the time that you're out there, this is an amazing wide country to look at. When you're on a bike, you feel the road, like you feel every single bump in it. You just the thing that if you don't drive a lot, if you're flying over these states, you're looking down on it, you're not seeing it. But when you're on that bike, I rode from the Bay Area down to LA. Okay, so that's different. It gets hotter down in LA, and then I went over to Vegas, and then it's really hot and flat, and you got a whole different sense of the air is a different humidity. And then you ride over to Phoenix, and when I was going through Phoenix, it was 107, and I'm like, oh my God, this is brutal. And you've got to constantly pour water over yourself to have the the evaporation. And I wear all my gear, so I'm wearing like an adventure suit because I didn't know I could be in the snow, I could be in the rain, I could be in everything. And when you wear the proper gear, it makes it so much easier to ride. And you're dehydrating a lot less, even though you need to be conscious that you are dehydrating. And that's, I think, one of the biggest dangers of motorcycle long distance travel that isn't talked about enough, is you've got to constantly hydrate, constantly keep your blood sugar at an appropriate level so that your focus is there. So I'd always have snacks in my tank bag, or drinks in my side pouch. When you get down to like if you haven't been down to South Arizona and New Mexico, like, it is some amazingly beautiful landscape and such a beautiful place to wake up and get on the road early, because when you get up there and the sky's just a little bit pink, or you've got a little bit of fog, and it just starts to clear away as the sun starts to come over the horizon, and you've got a little bit of dew on the cactus, and it's like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful, beautiful place. And then at 1 o'clock when it's 107 degrees, you're like, I am going to pass out and die right now. So I need to either pull over and get some shade and just like hang out someplace that's not going to kill me.
Siesta.
Yeah, exactly. And so the experience that I had, I was riding across Oklahoma, and Oklahoma is flat. There's flatness, and then there's flatness. And when you grow up on the West Coast, you've got mountains, so you've got a sense of horizon. And I was riding on this road, and if it was 10 miles straight, it was 100 miles straight. There was no curve in this road, and there was no change in the horizon. It was flat as a desk. And I'm riding on this road, and my brain, it stopped having a sense of what was up and what was down. And I literally felt the world turned upside down, and I felt like I was riding on the bottom of the earth. Like, there's no up or down. Like, the earth is, your feet are on the ground. So I felt like I was hanging upside down on the earth, because I could see there was just sky and ground equally in my vision, and the horizon was straight and the road was straight, and it was the most surreal thing. And I could just feel the bike just turn upside down, and I feel like gravity is just like holding me to this earth. And I'm like, all right, I should get off the bike now. Maybe I need some food or something. And then you roll into Missouri, and the landscape starts to turn into these like slow rolling hills, so you just start to go up and then down and then up and then down. And then you get into Illinois, and there's a little more trees and stuff. And Indiana, and it's the cuisine is different. Each has, I tried to eat in, regional local places. I didn't want to try and eat in any like chain places, because I wanted to experience those places and talk to those people and have those experiences. And the motorcycle for me was just the best way to do it. And when you get up in the morning and you get out of your tent and you can't wait to get on the road, and then you're just out there and with just yourself and the bike, and I feel like that's the relationship that people that don't ride don't understand. It's like, well, it's just a motorcycle. Like, no, it's like I have a relationship with this piece of equipment that someone designed, that I've personalized, that is the modern day horse. It's like you get from A to B, and it is such a personal relationship. And some of us have multiple bikes, and some people only have one bike, and they have the perfect bike for them.
It's an extension of themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like, for me, it's kind of like, like cameras or golf clubs, right? Like, each one has a purpose. Like, you're not going to ride your bike out in the dirt, getting into the gravel and going up the side of a mountain, because that's not what that bike's built for. It's not the best use of that bike. But, for the open road, your bike's going to be a lot better than my little 250 dirt bike, because that 250 is just going to beat you up. And I've ridden that bike because I had some friends who came out from Ohio, and we rode parts of Washington, Oregon, Nevada, and California. And in a week, we did 2,700 miles.
Wow.
And 2,700 miles on a 250 will teach you that 250 is good for some things and not good for a lot of things. And that last day, we woke up, me and Matt, we woke up in Mono Lake, and we rode from Mono Lake to Portland, Oregon in a day. And we had a 2-hour stop where he had to go to urgent care because he had a reaction to probably some kind of pollen, where his eyes were so inflamed that they were just like slits. So he needed like antibiotics, he needed adrenaline. And so, we had a little bit of a stop, because he would pull off his sunglasses and people would be like, oh, whoa, you okay there, sir? And so he finally went to urgent care on that thing. But that was almost 700 miles in a day.
Wow.
And yeah, on a 250, it's not ideal.
Not easy.
No. But, you get up to like a 700, and you're doing like gravel and dirt and like back roads. It's a wonderful time. It's good to have a mid-sized bike. I would not want to do, dirt and gravel on a 1200, but I'd much rather do it on a small bike because it's so much easier to pick up. Yeah. But on a big bike on the highway, yeah, that weight is gonna really be nice and smooth. If you get like a BMW K1600, like that motor is so smooth you don't even know it's on. And that bike you can really still throw around in the corners if you want to. But in the parking lot, at the weight that it's at, is a nightmare to move around for any kind of tip over. But as long as it doesn't tip over, it's super smooth and it's great. But not that I have one. I've ridden them, but I don't. My biggest bike, I think, is a project bike that's a K100 that I'm kind of working on right now. That needs to get I need to rewire the electrical because I stripped down to the frame to kind of make like a street tracker style of it. So.
Wow, that'll be a fun project. That'll be fun to ride.
If it ever gets finished, it'll be fun to ride. But still, it's an unfinished project along with a couple others. So yeah. So that's the the motorcycles are my kind of my initial connection to the maker community. To loop it back to that was through that. But that's also something that's just like the mental health aspect of my life is connected to motorcycles and resetting and going through that. So.
Yeah, no, I can identify with that, and I'm glad that you shared that because being a photographer isn't necessarily a maker, but you are the person that helps Maker Camp what it is. I hear so many people talk about, making sure that they stop by and see you so they can update their photo or they have a vision for themselves. And a lot of the makers are small business owner-operators, and they're trying to brand themselves. And I'm aware of that, as you are, being a small business owner. And, you make that happen for a lot of people. So, I appreciate what you do for the maker community. I'm glad that you're a part of it. And thank you for being a part of the podcast and sharing your time with me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm glad to take some time and talk.
You want to do those rapid fires?
Yeah.
Or just do a couple.
All right, start throwing them at me.
Pizza or tacos?
Oof.
I cannot believe this is a difficult question for adults.
Well, the problem is, my problem is I'm gluten intolerant. So there's not a great pizza dough. It becomes it doesn't have that elasticity that is great. I can occasionally say, okay, I'm going to suffer through it. I'll have a pizza. And it is amazing. And I love, there's a great pizza in Portland, a Pizza Shoals that was the first date with me and my girlfriend. And it's amazing pizza, thin crust, limited toppings. They don't pile it up. It's the best of the best. And so that is an amazing experience. And sometimes I will occasionally sacrifice my own health for that. But in general, I'd rather have a corn tortilla on a taco. And there's some amazing taco places. There's Las Piñolas Taqueria that we really love to go to. They've got great chilaquiles on the weekend. There's a much more diversity that I can eat just because of the gluten thing. But so that's if I had a choice, it's pretty 50-50 because I've had amazing tacos and I've had amazing pizza, but just physically I can't eat the dough. So
I understand.
Yeah.
All right, in your shop, what are you listening to when you're in your shop?
Generally podcasts, honestly. A lot of the ones that for a long time that I was listening to, they're more the interviews because then I'm getting to hear about other people's lives and kind of a different perspective and what drives them creatively. And so that kind of keeps me going. I don't listen to a lot of music, and I haven't done that for a long time. The problem is when you're listening to music, if it's on a streaming service or whatever, the algorithm's just feeding you these different things, and sometimes the emotions of the music goes up and down, and it's not a consistent level of one thing or another. And so then that can kind of be a little bit distracting for the energy that I need to keep consistent if I'm working on a project. But if you need to get amped up, like music's great. And if I am listening to it, it's going to be like a classical music because it needs to just kind of have a certain rhythm to it that can't be too emotionally manipulative with like, oh, I broke up with this person or, I lost my dog or, whatever. So that would be either classical music or podcasts.
What's your favorite tool in the toolbox? I would guess your toolbox would be more photo aligned, but
I've got, from the house remodel, I've got so many different saws and sanders and chisels and my favorite tool for the that kind of I had the most kind of not a relationship with, but you pick up a tool and you're going to be doing a certain thing and it's going to put you in a certain mindset. I found a in a secondhand store actually. I was having lunch with a buddy and I was like, let me pop over here and it's an open mouth Stanley chisel, and I think it's 93 or 94. I think it's like a 3/4 inch or 1 inch open mouth chisel, or not chisel, plane. Sorry. So because each one of those pieces that I was putting in either would have a little bit of damage or a little bit of a little bit of finesse to get it to fit to the side piece, and if there was a little something that was there I needed to flatten out to get that real tight joint, that was the one piece that I would use. And when you're doing salvaged oak flooring, you know that a sliver will burn. That oak, when it goes into your finger, will annoy you for days on end, because it is not. I know that Sean hates white oak, and I love the way it looks on a floor, but I do not like a sliver in my finger with white oaks.
No. All right. What about collaboration? Who would you like to collaborate with?
I mean, there's so many people that I like, because for me it's the collaboration is the best part of being a photographer, because you're working with your team, whether it's a stylist or someone working on the backgrounds, or your assistant or art directors. Like art directors, if you have a great art director who works with you that is collaborative in a way that it's not about their idea or your idea, it's about what the best idea for the project is. So those are the kind of people, and I feel like that is, something that together you can build something that you're not going to come up with independently, because they're going to have ideas that you would never have had, and you would come up with something that they wouldn't have, or maybe there's some project that they've been thinking of but they haven't really cracked that nut yet, and you're like, oh, well, I can just do this or this. And so there's plenty of people that I try to reach out on, and I may have like an idea here or there, but there's no one specific thing that I'm kind of thinking of right now. But sometimes if somebody's a really amazing writer and they have some ideas, or I have some ideas, but when I write something, it takes a long time. I really love reading, but sometimes when I'm trying to write something, I need to really stay on task, and that can be a challenge because of the way my brain is jumping around all the time.
Where can people find your work? Where can they find you if they're looking for you online?
Well, for commercial photography, just markadamspictures.com. That shows the range of the commercial work. There's there's a lot of portraiture on there. There's a whole section of motorcycle stuff from the AMA Vintage Days in Ohio, which I love shooting, and it's an amazing event. If you haven't ever been, it happens in July every year. It's been going on for decades. It's all stuff vintage, which is funny now that vintage is the 90s. Vintage motorcycles used to be in the 60s, and now it's like 90s. But you've got the opportunity to hang out with 20, 30,000 people that love motorcycles over the course of the weekend. You've got vintage motocross racers, you've got street racers, you've got trials bikes, you've got hare and hound, you've got mini bikes, and it's again, the community is really funny. Take a slight bit of an aside back to the motorcycles. I was riding an undersized bike on a tour of Georgia because my buddy wanted to do a loop in Georgia with some people, and I had a little KLX 230 that we just threw some plates on and a light, and we're riding. I don't know, it was about 1,100 miles, and it was supposed to be mostly like gravel and dirt, like 70-30, but it ended up, we rode a lot of fresh paved asphalt because they had just paved that year apparently, and so it was 50-50, so it was a lot smaller than I wanted it to be, but I just wanted a bike that I could bang around and not care about. And so then I spent the 9-hour drive back to Cleveland thinking about what the next bike was going to be, and I was looking at the Huskies and like the 501s, and a buddy of mine who had been on that trip and is an amazing friend, and he's one of the reasons I love Cleveland. He sent me a text. He's like, this just popped up on Facebook Marketplace. And he's like, you need this bike. This is the bike you need. And he's like, look at this, say yes. I'll go, we'll load my trailer up and we'll go get it. And so I thought I don't even know why I thought about it that long. It should have been an immediate yes. But he called the guy and he talked to him for like half an hour. He's like, all right, we're going down tomorrow. We're going to look at this bike. You're going to get this bike. And this guy had bought this bike brand new, put everything into it, had built it exactly the way this bike needed to be built. He put a rally tower on it, a carbon fiber fairing on the front from Italy. He did the exhaust. He did custom suspension on it. He did a recluse clutch on it, bags, and all the stuff. And so we're talking to this guy, and he starts telling us these stories. And we stayed there. We talked to him for 2 hours. This guy, he tells us how he the first date with his wife, and he took her out for the first date to like a hare and hound, like a race through the woods, and she she didn't know what she was getting into. She just wore he said wear something comfortable. She was wearing like jeans and a sweatshirt or something, and he crashed in the race in the middle of the race and cut his neck up because they were using like baling twine to mark the course, and so it like gotta cut his head off, but it like cut his head, and he's bleeding down his neck, and he's pushing the bike back in the middle of the race. And she's like, well, are you done? He's like, no, I'm done with this. Like, the race isn't over, but I'm done with this. And she's like, well, I didn't take you as a quitter. And he gets back on the bike and he finishes second. Like, so that's when you know you met your person, right? Like, so this guy at 72 was selling his modern bike to focus on vintage motocross.
Wow.
And so he had another, I don't know, 8-10 bikes in the garage, and we're talking, and like we know all the same people at vintage days and stuff. And so I get back to Cleveland, and my friend, I'm having dinner with her and her husband. She's like, oh, I heard you got a new bike. And so I start telling her these stories, because this guy had amazing stories. He also ran the foot race Iditarod, where you're hauling your stuff in a tub behind you in the snow for the Iditarod list. And I'm like, this guy was like, he wanted to do something, he was going to do it. And so I'm telling her all these stories, and I'm amazed. And I'm like, this bike is way better than I'll ever be, like, because this bike could be a pure race bike. And she's like, what was his name? And I was like, so I tell her, I was like, I went to school with his daughter since in first grade, and his wife was my cross country coach. Like, wow. That's what Cleveland is, because like Cleveland is like 1 degree. It's not Kevin Bacon 7 degrees. It's like somebody's cousin dated somebody else's cousin, or like your brother went to school with so and so. And every time I meet somebody from Cleveland, no matter where it is in the world, it's like, if you talk to them for even 5 minutes, you're like, oh, well, they're 3 blocks away from this buddy. And it's such a tight knit community of just kind of a small town. Everybody knows everybody kind of vibe. And this bike is, it's a Husky 2017 F50. Is every time I look at it, I'm like, how did I get this bike? Like, because this bike is just so perfect for the way I want to ride. And I'm not, I'm a mid rider. I'm not like, I didn't grow up doing it, so I don't have that like natural ability to feel the bike, and it's like always kind of working a little bit too hard. And with my back beat up the way it is, it's like I've always kind of got to guard it a little bit. But every time I get off that bike, I like look back and I'm like, oh god damn, I own that bike. Like that bike is just like it's a machine. It's a surgeon. And so that same buddy that I did that found that bike and that we rode Georgia, we've ridden the Washington BDR, and he's ridden a couple other BDRs. He rode the Utah BDR, and he's rode the Northeast BDR. But we did the Texas BDR X, which is down in the Big Bend area in Texas. And so we trailered our bikes down. There were 4 of us. So I do not recommend driving from the northern border to the southern border with 4 people in a truck and then go ride for 6 days and then riding back, because it just took so much time on the road, feeling like this is never going to end. And it was just 2 days of solid driving at both ends of that trip. But once you get down to the Big Bend area, it was amazingly beautiful. Because we rode around the Big Bend National Park and then the state park, and then we rode up to Marfa, Texas, the art town, and hung out there for a day, and then came back down. And that whole area along the Rio Grande is just, it's so beautiful, especially that time of year too. But it's one of the, to get out to the national parks and be able to ride in those is just such an honor and opportunity that we should all take advantage of.
Yeah, just a lot of beautiful land. Well, Mark, thank you so much. You gave me a lot. You gave the community a lot.
Probably more than you thought you were going to get today.
I tell you what, though, Listen, I've been, trying to get this off the ground, and there's so many people from the maker community being so generous, and you're generous. And when you posted that you found the podcast and you didn't realize that I had a podcast, I was really happy and excited that you did, and even more so that you're sharing your time with me and all these different stories. Like, everybody knows a little bit about you because you're a large presence in Maker Camp and the Maker community, but to get to know a little bit more about you, I bet you that you and I have more in common than we talked about here today. But that would be a discussion maybe on a motorcycle.
Well, part 2. You can do a part 2.
Yeah.
If a guest drops out, you can always give me.
All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks for joining me on Create and Connect podcast, and I wish you all the best. I wish you a speedy recovery, and I know that you're going through challenges right now, and I hope you meet them with everything that you need to be successful.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I got another doctor's appointment tomorrow with the ortho to look at the lumbar MRI to see what we can do with it. So,
all right, say a prayer.
And maybe a shot of steroids in the back. All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, too.
Thanks again to Mark Adams for joining me today. I can't believe that we chatted so long. I can't believe how free he was with his time and with sharing his experience with us. I want to thank him so much for being a cornerstone of the Maker Camp and being there working tirelessly throughout the whole event. I'm going to put down in the bottom some show notes. I want you guys to go check out markadamspictures.com. I want you to check out Mark Adams on Instagram and also his friends over at Skidmark and all the great things that they're doing to try to get young people into the trades. Once again, thank you for joining me on Create and Connect podcast. Remember, keep creating, keep connecting. Thanks for joining me.